good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on when you're doing your Wix. Hopefully you're doing it on time and it's not late and you've done your supporting item. I am doing Ecology Wix number 2, objective number 2. If you haven't set up your Wix, go ahead and do so now. Here are the 4 questions. There are multiple parts to these questions, so just be ready that you're going to have to compare and contrast and talk about multiple sides or multiple perspectives of each question. If you're all set up, let's go ahead and begin. Our matrix objective for objective number 2. Basically, the objective is to understand that the environment changes as a result of human activities and natural events, and how those changes impact organisms and populations. At the beginning of the presentation, I'm going to focus more on natural events and kind of tie it into human activities towards the end. So let's get started. So in wildlife or in environments, different environments and things like that, you have something called disturbances. A disturbance is something that is temporary. It's a temporary change in environmental conditions that causes change in the ecosystem. Okay? Disturbances often act quickly with great effects and sometimes resulting in removal of large amounts of biomass. Biomass is things that were once alive that are now living. They cover the floor, the forest floor, the rainforest floor. Depends on what ecosystem you're talking about. So disturbances are like forest fires, flash floods, things that happen quickly, and they cause some amounts of damage, but majority of the time, a lot of the animals usually live. But then you have something called a catastrophic event. Okay, a catastrophic event is an event that is sudden and it changes and creates a change in the feature of the Earth. Okay, catastrophic events are usually violent and very destructive natural events. For example, if you look at this picture right here, this would be a picture of Mount St. Helens right after its eruption. If you look at the destruction it made. Not only did it burn everything in its path, it literally mowed down all of those trees. These are full-grown trees that were just broken like twigs based on the force of the eruption of the volcano. Now, about 16, 15 years later, you have something that's very similar to what you see on the left, but things are starting to grow back. You see that? Things are starting to grow back. Now, the difference between a disturbance and a catastrophic event, a disturbance won't take long to kind of bounce back. A catastrophic event, such as Mount St. Helens, is going to take some time. Here you have a before and after picture, and it looks like it's just barely growing back. Here's another picture of a catastrophic event that could cause some change in the environment. Mind you, this is more of a tsunami hitting a city, but if this was a coastal line or along where there was jungle or trees or forests, a lot of those animals would have had to move, and it would probably cause a lot of deaths and a lot of damage. Now, let's look at the two and compare the two. So, in a catastrophic event, they can be deadly, extremely violent. It's widespread destruction, and it takes a really long time to recover from, which is the complete opposite when you're talking about a disturbance. A disturbance is not as violent. It can cause some temporary change in the environment, so it will cause some kind of change, but it won't take as long to fix or to kind of bounce back. It can actually be good for an ecosystem. Believe it or not, a lot of times if a forest fire happens naturally and it clears out all the brush and all that biomass, it actually is good for the actual forest. It ends up growing back even healthier than it was before. Okay, again, like mentioned before, it clears out biomass. It's dangerous, but many animals survive. They're able to survive a lot of these disturbances, whether they're floods, whether they're fires, whatever it is that it's a disturbance that happens quick, but it doesn't cause a long time effect in their ecosystem. Now, some things that they do share, some qualities that they do share, they're both quick. They both happen pretty quickly. Okay, both of them will cause change in the environment. Okay, they both can be sudden with no warning. Either events can come at no warning. Okay, and then importantly, it can either one, whether it's a catastrophic event or just a disturbance, can affect humans. Okay, it can, if you get caught in a tsunami, or if you're living near the forest and there's a forest fire. I mean, both of them are, one's catastrophic, one is a disturbance, but both will affect you. Both take time to recover through secession. Now, secession is something that we're going to discuss here in a second, but both of them will have to go through a process of secession in order to bounce back to a way either to be better than it was before or just to get back to its normalcy. Now, speaking of secession, we have something called ecological secession. And that is basically the gradual process in which ecosystems change and develop over time. Nothing remains the same, and habitats are constantly changing. There are two main types of secession, primary and secondary. If you look at these two images right here, the one on the left is what you would call primary. Okay, it started from rocks, and then it went on to trees and forests. We're going to discuss more about this in a little bit. And then on the right, you have secondary. You had a forest fire, it burned down to the ground, and then you had it growing back. Okay, we're going to discuss this in a second. Now, speaking of primary succession, it occurs over time. The soil depth increases due to the decomposition of plant matter, and there are gradual increases of species and diversity of the ecosystem. So as the ecosystem evolves from basically rocks, okay, and then you have something called moss and lichens, and it goes on to small flowers, to shrubs, to small trees, all the way to shade-tolerant trees. Okay, started from nothing and made it all the way to the forest. Okay, and as it grows, the diversity of the ecosystem is also going to increase. So more animals, different types of animals are going to start to come into this forest as there's more shade, more places to hide, and things like that. More food starts to come, things like that. So this is primary succession. Then you have secondary succession. Secondary succession is a process in which it started by an event like forest fire or a hurricane that reduces an already established ecosystem. So the ecosystem was already established. It was already there. So basically, the secondary succession is an ecological succession that occurs after the initial succession has been disrupted. So something was disrupted. So basically, the fire disrupted the actual succession that was already occurring. And they kind of bounce back because a lot of the roots and a lot of the seeds and a lot of the plant matter that allows them to survive the fire. Now, secondary succession is usually happens a lot quicker than primary because it was already established. A lot of those roots are already there. A lot of those seeds have been dispersed. A lot of those animals will come back. Okay. And then you have something where you have short-term and long-term events in environmental. Speaking of environmental events, now short-term environmental changes like droughts, floods, and fires do not give populations time to adapt and change, and forces them to either move or even animals even become extinct because they're not able to prepare for whatever change happens. Okay? Which is kind of like the opposite of the long-term event. If some long-term environmental changes are more gradual and allow populations the opportunity to adapt. For example, natural temperature fluctuations in cycles that occur on Earth over thousands of years. Think about some events that we've talked about. For example, Pangea. Pangea took thousands and thousands of years and went through different types of transitions in temperatures. Okay? Think about now. Some people would say we're actually experiencing a long-term environmental change right now through global warming. But that's up for debate. And lastly, now I'm going to tie into the human's effects on environmental conditions. Unfortunately, a lot of the effects that we have on environmental conditions aren't necessarily positive. The human activities affect the environment through agriculture, urbanization or building of the cities, the use of resources, polluting from waste disposal, energy production, climate change. Many of these activities can permanently alter an ecosystem and even destroy ecosystems. Okay, so here's a before and after picture of some, I can't tell if it's a rainforest, it looks like a rainforest that has been cleared out. And we're talking about less than 5 years from the before and after. Okay, the picture on the right is the Alabama Gulf Shores when we had a huge oil leak underwater that leaked oil for, I think, weeks at a time, and it completely destroyed the Gulf Coast for a while. I don't think it's even bounced back yet. It's getting there, but it's going to take time. Now, I don't want you to just think that all human activity is negative, because we do actually do some good things for the environment. Now, humans' positive effect on environmental conditions. Here, there are groups of students at UCLA cleaning the beaches. You have game wardens, doing their part cleaning up, planting new trees, using alternative energy sources. All those things help when it comes to helping the environment. Okay, minimizing your carbon footprint is going to help out big time. It takes your dependence off of oil, and anytime you go out into the environment, make sure you clean up after yourself. That's it. It's very simple. But for some reason, we have a hard time as humans protecting our earth and taking care of it. That's all really what I have for you today. Make sure you take care of your supporting item. Your supporting item is basically investigate how runoff from the Mississippi River has impacted the Gulf of Mexico. Let's list several ways that the problem can be remediated. That's all I have for you today. Make sure you take care of all parts of your WICs. Make sure you do it on time. And again, if you have any questions, come by my room or any one of the other teachers. We're gladly here to help you. Have a nice day.